Well, of course, he said he wanted a timetable. Before that, we have to understand that we lost the 2006 election, and the Democrats thought that they had a mandate. They thought they had a mandate to get us out of Iraq. And I was prepared to sacrifice whatever was necessary in order to stand up to what I believed in. Now, in December of 2006, after the election, Governor Romney was asked what he thought about the surge. He said at that time, "I won't weigh in, I'm a governor." At the time, he didn't want to weigh in because he was a governor. I was out there on the front lines with my friends saying, we not only can't withdraw, but we got to have an additional troops over there in order for us to have a chance to succeed. Then in April was a very interesting year in 2007. That's when Harry Reid said, the war is lost and we got to get out. And the buzzword was timetables. Governor, the right answer to that question was no, not what you said. And that was, we don't want to have them lay in the weeds until we leave. And Maliki and the president should enter into some kind of agreement for, quote, timetables. Timetables was the buzzword for withdrawal.
Senator? Why do you insist on not using the actual quote?
The actual quote is, we don't want them to lay in the weeds until we leave. That is the actual quote. And I'm sure fact checkers. It means a timetable for until we leave.
Senator, let me jump in. The quote that I have. Is it not fair to have the person who's being accused of having a position he doesn't have be the expert on what his position is? How is it that you're the expert on my position when my position has been very clear? I'll tell you.
I'm the expert. I'm the expert on this when you said I won't weigh in, I'm a governor. You couldn't weigh in because you were a governor back when we were having the fight over it.
That's a separate point.
The fact is that I have fought for this surge. I have said we need to have this succeed. I know the situation in Iraq, and I am proud to have supported this president and supported the fact that we are succeeding in Iraq today. If we had waited and laid in the weeds until we leave, then Al-Qaeda would have won and we would be facing a disastrous situation.
There's two separate issues being discussed, and I just want to clarify both of them. First of all, to Senator McCain, the quote is from Governor Romney on GMA that you're quoting. The actual quote is, well, there's no question that the President and Prime Minister al-Maliki have to have a series of timetables and milestones that they speak about, but those shouldn't be for public pronouncement. You don't want the enemy to understand how long they have to wait in the weeds until you're going to be gone.
He does not say he's supporting the withdrawal until the enemy lays in the weeds until we leave. That means that we were leaving.
It's open to interpretation.
How could the enemy lay in the weeds?
Senator, if you had a question on this, you could have asked.
Could not weigh in as governor on the surge when it was a critical issue.
Okay, so that's the second issue. So let me just allow you to respond to the issue of the going to be gone, laying in the weeds question.
Timetables was the buzzword for those that wanted to get out.
Okay.
The answer was no.
And you're saying point blank you did not want to get out then. What did you mean by that statement?
That we have a series of timetables and milestones for working on the progress that they're making, the progress we're making, the rule of law, what their soldiers are doing, what our soldiers are doing, how many troops they're able to recruit, how well trained are they. And as a matter of fact, the individual asked in the following question, do you have a specific time? Would you support Congress if they gave you a specific time? I said absolutely not. And by the way, this has been around. If this was a question, it could have been raised in April or May.
On the second issue,
it was raised.
I want to give you an opportunity.
It was raised many times. I've raised it many times as whether you have the experience and the judgment to lead this country in the war against radical Islamic extremism. I've raised that many times.
I want to give Senator McCain,
and I will continue to raise it.
I want to give Governor Romney the opportunity to respond to the other accusation. I want to give. Let's just focus on this second one, which is the issue that Senator McCain raised, which was actually going to be my next question to you, was that you were asked about backing the surge when you were a governor, and you did say you would not take a position. This was in December of 2006. 2 months later, you announced you were running for president. Why, 2 months before you were running for president, were you not willing to take a position on supporting or not supporting a surge?
Look, as a governor of the state, there are a lot of issues of a federal nature that I didn't take a position on. I was running a state. My responsibility was for running a state. When I became a governor, I took a whole series of positions on national issues. That's normal and natural. With regards to the surge, the briefing that I received an early briefing from Fred Kagan on the size of our military. After I received that, I said I support increasing our military by at least 100,000. And then just prior to the president's announcement of the surge, I spoke again with Fred Kagan, and he laid out the philosophy of the surge, his vision for it. As you know, many consider him one of the authors of the surge idea. And when he gave me that report, I met with my staff and announced that day that I supported a surge. The president announced later that day the entire program. So I supported it as a candidate for president, number one. Number two, with regards to this idea that I favor a specific date for withdrawal, I do not. We've had, I believe, since that interview that the senator quotes, we've had 10 or 12 debates. He's never raised that issue with me. He's never said, are you for a date specific? I've been asked that question time and again. Last debate we had, I said, I will not leave Iraq until we have secured Iraq and make sure it'll never become a safe haven. And what's interesting here is it's an attempt to do the Washington-style old politics, which is lay a charge out there, regardless of whether it's true or not. Don't check it. Don't talk to the other candidate. Just throw it out there. Get it in the media, in the stream. There's not a single media source that I've seen that hasn't said it was reprehensible. Even the New York Times said it was wrong. The Washington Post, they endorsed you. The Washington Post gave you 3 Pinocchios for it. It's simply wrong. I want to give, and the senator knows it.
Senator McCain, final comment on this subject, and then we have a lot more about Iraq that we're going to talk to the other candidates about as well.
That was the critical time of the debate. It wasn't in when he said what he said in December. It was after the election. President Bush fired Rumsfeld, and we announced that we were going to have a new strategy. That was the critical time. Timetables was the buzzwords. Timetables were the ones. And as far as Washington top politics is concerned, I think my friend Governor Huckabee, sir, will attest the millions of dollars of attack ads and negative ads you leveled against him in Iowa, the millions of dollars of attack ads you attacked against me in New Hampshire and have ever since. A lot of it's your own money. You're free to do with what you want to. You can spend it all. But the fact is that your negative ads, my friends, have set the tone, unfortunately, in this campaign. I say to you again, the debate after the election of 2006 was whether we were going to have timetables for withdrawal or not. Timetables were the buzzword. That was the Iraq study group. That was what the Democrats said we wanted to do. Your answer should have been no.
I want to go Jim Van Dyke with a question for, I believe, Congressman Paul.
Congressman Paul, this comes from Jay Majumdar from Roswell, Georgia. And he wants to know if you agree with Senator McCain's statement that the United States might need to have U.S. troops in Iraq for as long as even 100 years.
I don't even think they should have gone. So keeping them for 100 years, where's the money going to come from? You know, the country's in bankruptcy, and when I listen to this argument, I mean, I find it rather silly because they're arguing technicalities of a policy they both agree with. They agreed going in, they agreed for staying how many years, and these are technicalities. We should be debating foreign policy, whether we should have interventionism or non-interventionism, whether we should be defending this country or whether we should be the policeman of the world, whether we should be, you know, running our empire or not, and how are we going to have guns and butter? You know, the 70s were horrible because we paid for the guns and butters of the 60s. Now we're doing the same thing, and nobody even seems to care. The dollar's crashing, and you're talking about these technicalities about who said what, when? I mean, in 1952, we Republicans were elected to stop the war in Korea. 1968, we were elected to stop the war in Vietnam. And tragically, we didn't stop it very fast. 30,000 more men died. So when I talk about these long-term stays, I think, how many men are you willing to let die for this? For something that has nothing to do with our national security. There were no Al-Qaeda there, had nothing to do with 9/11, and there was no threat to our national security. They never committed aggression. It's unconstitutional. It's an undeclared war. And we have these silly arguments going on about who said what when. I think it's time to debate foreign policy and why we don't follow the Constitution and only go to war with a declaration of war.